there's so much to learn from each other, right? And it doesn't mean we're going to absorb the same belief structures or systems, but just let's listen and be interested and curious.
Welcome to Permission Slips, a space to practice paying attention to your life with self-compassion so you can experience the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. I'm so glad you're here with me for this conversation with my friend, Kelsey Green. Welcome, Kelsey.
Hey, Jillian. I'm so excited to be here.
I just am excited for people to know you. Kelsey is so gifted and so competent in so many ways. And we have grown our friendship over the last few years. And I can't wait to talk more about that. She has a really diverse and interesting background. And Kelsey is a community builder and an action strategist who helps entrepreneurs and individuals create their own vibrant communities. Through courses, retreats, and coaching, she empowers people to overcome loneliness and isolation by intentionally creating communities where genuine connection can thrive. What a powerful mission, Kelsey, that you help people overcome loneliness and isolation.
Thanks, Jillian. And it's been interesting because as I have done more research around this topic and seeing the statistics out there right now, especially in the US, it is mind-boggling, honestly. You know, when we look at the statistics around loneliness, also how a lack of connection can impact your actual physical health, right? And we're learning that it's as important as, you know, the food you eat or the exercise even that you might be doing in your day-to-day life. So it's so important. So thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about it.
Well, yeah, I'm excited for people to think about their relational health, as you said, as important as any other aspect of our physical or mental health. And so before we get into that, because I know you have a course that you're launching this week and so much to offer people, but let's step back and talk about who you are. And just so people kind of know how I know Kelsey, we met years ago now in Jazzercise when I was an instructor, and we would dance together. And then out of that grew our friendship as she joined a course that I offered. It was a coaching group for women who wanted to be more intentional about discovering their unique purpose. And Kelsey, I remember sharing with you my vulnerability about starting this course that I had never offered before. And you signed up with such curiosity and openness and just a genuine support and enthusiasm that I will never forget. Just how empowering and confidence building having you in that very first cohort was. And from there, it's morphed into a friendship that really we've learned to be entrepreneurs together, and we've encouraged one another in that journey, which has been such a gift. So tell us about who you are and the journey that you've been on the last couple of years as an entrepreneur.
Well, thank you, Jillian, so much for that introduction. And yeah, I love the journey of our friendship going from, I think you were the teacher at the time in Jazzercise, and just being in awe of your grace and athleticism and just also loving the person that you are. So I guess to start out, I was raised by a single mom and, you know, had some tough stuff happen in childhood and knew I needed to forge a different path for myself. And so I went to school, I received my undergrad and focused on environmental studies. And I had started out in business. Actually, interestingly, I had started out in business, found that the business principles that were being taught at that university didn't align with ethically what I felt. And so I switched to environmental studies. And for a long time, I believed that these things were really at odds. So social and environmental good and business. But anyway, so I started out, I really wanted to be a scientist. And I did that for a while. I was in the field. I was looking at plants for a while. So I was doing botany, field research, and then I started doing wildlife. And I took a break from that to get my master's at University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And came back, and you know, it's interesting because when you're working side by side with people that are working in their passion, and it's not your passion or anywhere close, you know, it's really obvious, right? So I wanted so badly to be a scientist, and working with animals, and I had done some endangered species work in Asia, but really the data and the numbers and, the analytics just didn't like fill my heart up with joy, right? And slowly I feel like my course it became clear that it was more working with people and communications. And so it's interesting because when I received my master's, it was in the College of Science and Engineering at the University of Edinburgh, but I really sort of lobbied to do a different dissertation around looking at vulnerability between humans and non-humans. So in this case, it was humans and honeybees, but I framed it in this scientific way about honeybee decline, but really it was about vulnerability, right?
Wow.
So I came back from the UK and tried to go back to the science-based career and ended up doing more outreach and then ended up, working directly with people, communications, and I launched a consulting practice focusing on strategic communications, serving environmental clients, so similar clients to who I had worked with doing research. And, and then I took this job out in Central Washington in water policy, again, focusing on communications and public relations. And sort of meanwhile, I've had this calling, right? This calling of what would it look like to work with women, especially. And so I started working with women in mostly a business setting. And through this whole journey, the one through line has been of my life, I feel like has been building community. So I have built so many little informal communities, and then I've built some formal communities, right? So launching a 501c3 that is still growing and thriving in our town, and creating these standing networking events in the St. Juan Islands where I lived for a while that grew and grew and is still going on today. It's been so rewarding. And meanwhile, I've seen people just really struggle with this, really struggled to find connection. And that was maybe 10 years ago. Fast forward to today, and I feel like the effects of social media and our lives so steeped in technology are creating silos of people that are just feeling more and more isolated, but they feel like they're more connected because of all their friends on social media. But inside, it's this deep loneliness.
Totally. And I want to talk more about the ways that you want to help people build their sense of connection with other people. But before we go there, I want to go back to something you said about your sense of calling. Mm-hmm. And kind of this journey that you were on throughout the course of your education and career, following that longing to be a scientist and longing to be in a place where the thing you were doing made you come alive, and then kind of bumping up against, okay, this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't the place. And I remember when we first met through Jazzercise, we had one conversation years ago where you were in this place of wrestling with, what do I want to do? Like, this is a job that pays my bills. And also there's something deeper inside me that I'm wondering about. So how did you know that it was time to make a change in your career? And what was it like to take that brave step?
I guess sometimes I hesitate around the word calling because I don't want people to feel like if they aren't being called to something, that there's something wrong with them, or that necessarily everyone feels this. Because to be honest, the idea of a calling and the way it appeared for me was very abstract, right? It wasn't, gosh, I envy people that have this the calling is so clear. It's very specific.
Me too.
Yeah, I didn't have that. The way it shows up for me is, and there's lots of books and mentors that talk about this, but how does it actually feel in your body? So when I am doing work that is not aligned, and it's not even bad work, right? I work with amazing people, amazing clients. I've done lots of neat and cool research. But honestly, it can feel really boring or hard. And it's not because I don't like doing hard things. I love doing work that's challenging, and I'm learning, and it's pushing me, and I'm growing.
Yeah.
That's really different.
I know this about you. I can affirm that. You really do. You're not afraid of a challenge. Oh, okay. But there's a difference.
There's a difference. Work that is like pushing a super heavy rock up a hill, right? And then you end up kind of procrastinating, and you end up maybe buffering, with food or whatever else, versus work that is hard but motivating, and the way that feels inside your body, right? So that's kind of how I knew. And so honestly, because let's say the calling is not so specific, it really is day to day, the types of work that I'm doing, how do I feel in my body when I'm doing these different things?
So almost that sense of alignment that you've talked about, that alignment with your values, the things that matter to you, your why, that you feel viscerally in an embodied way. So that sense of where I am, no matter what it is that I'm doing, it resonates on an embodied level. And I'm thinking for me, and we've talked about this, like we come from different faith backgrounds, right? For me, my sense of calling really is rooted in my alignment with where I sense God is leading me. Like there's this sense of like divine calling where for me, it's not, when I think of calling, it's not like this one, cloud in the sky saying, and you will do this forever. It's a constant sense of reevaluation with, am I aligned today with where God is inviting me to step out bravely in courage and dependence on his power and not my own next? Like, is this right now where I'm supposed to be walking forward in the gifts and passions that he's given me? And that looks different in different seasons. And so I think about that sense of calling, like you mentioned that clarity that I think most of us long for, that sense of clarity of like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm made for. And that comes in little bits and pieces, but it's much less clear than I would like it to be. Yeah. And so that sense of embodiment and connection with your body, how do you know what your right next step is?
Yeah, what a great question. Just to speak to the alignment piece a little bit. So it is that feeling in the body. And it also is actually, at some point I realized I wanted to identify the values that were important to me and I mean, write those out. And I think that is a difference in our faith backgrounds, is that sometimes I get jealous of people that have your faith background because I feel like the values perhaps are so much clearer. They're sort of given to you, I think. That's my impression. I could be wrong about that. And for people that maybe have different spiritual backgrounds, it's sort of like there's not really a framework in place yet. So you're figuring it out for yourself, right? And that means actually identifying what are the core values that I'm going to live by.
Yeah. Well, this makes me think of the work that we started doing together when you joined my very first mastermind, right? Where, to be clear, for me, I have different values than a lot of other people who share my faith in God, right? Like, yes, like obedience, I hate that word, but really that sense of doing what he says is right and good in the world is my first and foremost. Like I want to be in alignment with God's ways because my belief is that his ways are the best, like for my good, for the good of others and for love and goodness in the world. And so I want to be in alignment with what he says is good and right and true and beautiful. And that looks different for me than it does for other people. Like I would say, so we talk in the course that I'm actually offering another version of this intentional life course starting this week. It's open, registration is open, but we did this work together where you and I and a group of other women, we talked about, okay, what are our top 3 to 5 highest values? And for me, one of my highest values is vulnerability that you mentioned. Another high value along the same lines is authenticity. Like I want to show up fully, authentically as myself, no matter where I am.
Yeah.
And courage is another of my top values because I know that to live authentically and vulnerably takes a heck of a lot of courage. And yeah, and purpose is another one, the sense that we all are given a sense of purpose. I think that where our gifts and calling and story, to use that calling word again, where our experiences and passions, where all those things line up with our circumstances, wherever we are, like I believe that each of us has purpose in our life today. That's not just for our satisfaction and happiness, but for the good of others and for the world around us. And so those are some of my top values. I mean, I have others, but
I want to just go back to your mastermind and talk about that for a second. Because I feel like that was a really big step for me because prior to that, I feel like I had really, to be honest, like probably avoided people that identified as you do in terms of your faith background. But I love you so much. And I trusted that whatever you were putting together was going to be helpful and valuable for me. And that's also when I was in the very early journey of my deep trauma work. And I really wanted to do it. But I was worried because I felt like, okay, what if this is for only people with your faith background? And I know you were still kind of sorting out like, who is this offering for, right? But you and I had these long conversations about how can we show up for each other in the right way? How can you hold space both for people that might be wanting to have these discussions and someone with a different faith background, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was just so glad that I did your mastermind because it did decide you make that decision to show up fully.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did. I remember weeping, and not to say everyone's gonna be weeping, but I was like, I'm all here. I'm saying the words. I'm doing the thing. I'm showing up fully. And it was so interesting because I think your mastermind was the first place that I learned, that I might have different words for things. And, I might have a different spiritual background and be approaching things differently. And oh my gosh, there's so much to learn from each other, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't mean we're going to absorb the same belief structures or systems, but just let's listen and be interested and curious. And
Yes.
what are other people, what are they living by? What do they believe? And let's just take a minute and listen,
Yeah. Which is something I've always appreciated about you, Kelsey, and you've taught me so much about this, is that posture of openness and curiosity and humility of genuinely wanting to learn from everyone in your life. And I remember you asking me the question of like, okay, so is this just for women who consider themselves to be Christians? Is it like, I'm really interested in this content, but like, is it going to be weird? What kind of space are you trying to create? And I remember really honestly saying to you, I don't really know. I'm figuring this out, which felt really vulnerable to me because I wanted to protect you and your experience. But it was so helpful for you to ask the question, to be curious about my hope and my posture for this group, because you helped me clarify what I wasn't brave enough to put into words until you asked. And that's been such a through line in our friendship. As we've kind of taken this journey as entrepreneurs together and learned how to encourage one another and how to fail together. And we've, been kind of on parallel paths trying to develop our own businesses at the same time. And out of that mastermind experience really have forged a friendship that's been so precious to me. But that's been the consistent posture that you've held all along, is curiosity and learning from someone who's different than you. But you've also taught me to fight to find what's common and beautiful between us, like to find places that we can connect and places that we can learn from each other if we're willing to stay open to what the people around us have to offer. So I'm just so grateful for that about you and how your friendship has really expanded my ability to see people. And I just even wanted to create those spaces. I think that helped me clarify. I want to create spaces on the internet, in person, with people in real life, in my relationships, where I don't want to come with the answers and tell people what they need to believe. I want to create spaces where curiosity is safe, where we can be curious together and trust that we're going to find the answers we're looking for if we're willing to be curious and open. So I'm just grateful for that courage that you continue to embody.
Thanks, Jillian. And I just want to share one tiny anecdote. I don't think I've told you before. So I mentioned, and I guess I just wanted to say too, on a personal note, that my willingness to be curious and to be more open has also paralleled my trauma healing journey, because I do have some Christian trauma in my background. And so obviously, understandably that comes forward, and I'm being scared and worried and, all this stuff. And so as I work to heal some of that trauma, it's helped me become more open in that space, right? But I just wanted to share something from early days, I think maybe 2020, when I was going in for this pretty major surgery, and I was so scared. It was peak COVID, and I have medical anxiety, and so I was so scared, and I was like pretty certain I was gonna die. And I remember you said, I'll pray for you. I was like, prior to that moment, anytime someone said that to me, I would have this like visceral reaction, like, oh, like just really irritated and annoyed. And when you said that to me, I was like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. Whatever. If you got something that I don't know about, I don't have some magic. Okay, that's great. I'll take it. Perfect. I'll take your prayers,
Wow.
And I just think about that turning point, and then after that, when someone said that to me, I was like, I'll take it. You got it? I'll take it. You want to do that?
Totally.
Oh
my gosh. Thank you for sharing that, because, it's interesting. I think because of my background and just the people that I've spent time around, and partly going to a very liberal arts college, and I don't know, growing up outside the church, I just have a heightened sensitivity, I think, to how Christian language lands and how I have felt in the past and even current times when I hear certain, call it Christianese, right? Like jargon, and so I'm always very sensitive about the words that I use. And I don't typically, especially when like I don't know someone's faith background, it's not common for me to say, I'll pray for you, like to be that forthright about my faith. And so to me, it's telling again about our relationship that even at that point, there was that sense of safety and mutual respect that I knew I could show up and offer myself. Like I could show up as myself in an authentic offering. And I'm sure that you were vulnerable about what was happening because of who you are, right? You showed up fully, authentically as yourself, which gave me permission to show up authentically as myself and offer what I had, which was my prayer. And for you, you were willing to receive that because you trusted me. And I just think that's such a beautiful picture of friendship and relationship and vulnerability too, that there is vulnerability to show up authentically and to say, hey, we don't necessarily believe the same thing, but can we still be ourselves together? And can we receive from one another what we each have to give?
Yeah.
And I just continue to be in awe of your grace. You're a friend who, like, I can on like sort of vulnerable tiptoes kind of say, okay, is this okay? I have this, here you are. And you're like, yes, I love you. I thank you. I honor that. I'm so grateful for you that you make it so easy to be brave in friendship.
I guess I think about this a lot right now, especially because as I build this course, if I can just go into, some of the concepts around this for a second, it's interesting because I believe in aligned, meaningful relationships. And I have been through this massive journey, right, of finding these and having to let go of a lot of old friendships, with women that I loved so much, super smart women, good people, but just the values weren't aligned anymore. And this has been so challenging. And so when I talk about, my course is about building aligned and meaningful relationships, right? But it's also about building community and a diverse community. And I'm talking about your actual in-person community around you, because now more than ever, we need this, right? We need this so desperately. And so not everyone around you in your neighborhood, in your community, right? In your athletic groups, in jazzercise is going to have the same beliefs. But I believe it's so important for us to show up for each other and be able to hold space, listen, be accepting. They have their belief systems. I have mine. Can we still do jazzercise together? Can we still play pickleball together? Can we still go to a potluck together, right? Can we still do some service work together? Absolutely. Right?
Right. And don't we need that now? Like I think of the world, right? Like how divisive, how, like you said earlier, isolated and lonely is the world that we're living in. And how easy is it to other people who are different than us, to make them into other and to make assumptions about people because they don't fit in our group, whatever that group is, whether it's our faith or whether it's political views or some other ideology or even socioeconomic background or fill in the blank, right? It's so easy. It's easier to call someone an other and distance ourselves than to lean in and be curious and get close in proximity to people who are different than us. Talk about the value of that. Why does that matter to you, Kelsey?
Well, there's a couple levels, right? One is purely pragmatic. And I believe that, it's a little bit of a scary time right now. And I'm, from speaking purely on a practical level, the people around you in your actual neighborhood, in your actual town community are going to be the people that, are going to be around you if something super scary happened in the world, right? And I just also think it's great to have your neighbors watching out for anything scary happening around you on your street. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you need a cup of sugar, it's like, go get it from your neighbor. I just, I think some people can think of them as sort of antiquated, these old-timey ways of just being close to the people actually around you. Because I feel like, especially as Americans, we don't have a tribe anymore, right? Most of us, we maybe have a family unit or we maybe have friends and different groups, but we don't have that tight-knit communal tribe of all generations and all ages doing a thing together, right, anymore. And I think we can really feel that, honestly, as a species.
Mm-hmm.
So one level is very pragmatic, and that is resources around you. And then the other level is, we mentioned this earlier in this podcast, but is that because of the way we evolved, we need people around us, right? And we need a tribe, and we are not meant to live in isolation, but it's becoming, especially for Americans, it's almost like a badge of honor if you are self-sufficient and independent and you don't need anyone else, right? And that's not the way it is, like, in our
No.
hearts.
No,
And yeah,
in our brains, even like
yeah.
neurobiologically, right? Like we are actually neurobiologically in need of another brain, like from infancy to help our minds develop fully. We need another nervous system outside of us to help our brains make sense of who we are in time and space. Like we need that attachment, right? That secure attachment to another person to help us feel, in the words of Dan Siegel, seen, soothed, safe, and secure. Like we need from infancy another person. And like you said, as we like, we're not meant to do life alone. This is my soapbox, right? Like I'll say this until the day I die. Like we need people to help us become our true selves and live bravely and authentically in the world. And so everything you're saying, I'm like, yes, 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 we need each other practically, but relationally, emotionally, for our mental health, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And also, I'm thinking about people that are unpartnered and maybe don't have kids, maybe don't have a family of origin they feel safe with and can depend on. This is especially important for those people, I think. I think it's important for everybody, because who knows, your situation can change, your marriage can dissolve, whatever. But I think, for people that are unpartnered, who's going to take you to a surgery if you need a surgery, right? If something happens, break your leg, whatever, if you are going through a very, very dark time, who's going to be there for you? And you need to build these support systems in, especially as you age, to have that structure in your life of other people. It's so imperative.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about people that are listening. They're like, yeah, I actually want to have a diverse community of real people in my actual life, not just on the internet, but people in my actual life who will support me and that I can support. But I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how to cultivate this kind of community. What advice would you give them on where to start?
Well, I'll get on my soapbox now, because I think that this is really going to start hinging more and more so on digital boundaries. I think that we have become so dependent and invited our phones specifically into our every moments, and I think this is one of the issues. So I believe that we need to start putting in place digital boundaries and look at our use, our habits with our phones. So if you feel great about, people out there, if you feel great about how much time you spend scrolling on social media, how much time you're on your phone when you're around your family or friends, if you've got that all figured out, awesome. This isn't for you. For most of us, I'd say, there's so many apps and tools out there right now. I'll just give you one example and how my mindset's changed around it. There's this one called the RO box, which is like, one of a mentor you follow too, Jenna Kutcher, right? She's like, talks about this RO box a lot. And it's like a beautiful white box with a wooden lid. You can charge your phone in it, but basically it tracks the time that your phone's in the box. And it's especially great for families because they're wanting to be with their kids more or whatever, right? So they put your phone in the box. I used to think this was really ridiculous. Like, just put your phone away. Just put it away.
Right.
Like, you don't need to buy a $100 box and a membership, whatever. And now I'm realizing, with so many super duper smart people thinking about how to make this device more addictive, hey, whatever you need to do, whatever hacks you need to employ to be off your phone more and be out in the world, that is great, right? And I realize, real quick, I realize people have kids and you may need to have your notifications on, your ringer on, you got kids in school or aging parents or whatever. Obviously, if you need to do it, do it. But I feel like there's a lot of time we spend on our phones, and that is decreasing, the direct correlation to a decrease in how much time we're spending with each other.
And I'm even thinking about the research that shows even having your phone on a table when you're, say, out to coffee with a friend, or guilty of this, like if it's on the counter as I'm talking to my kids after school, there is a perceived barrier there that does create some difficulty in connecting all the way, because there's this reminder, this physical reminder that the person I'm with isn't fully present with me. And, we've all been in that situation where you're with a friend and all of a sudden their phone buzzes and they just check it. And it's like that moment of like, them looking away or looking at their watch, and I think I'm super sensitive to these things for whatever reason. It's like, they're not with me. They're not with me. Like, I'm not as important as whatever that thing was. And it's not like intentional. It's not, I totally get that that's not their heart, but it is that felt sense of, I'm not the most important person to this friend in this moment. And so, yeah, I just fully support that. Like, how can we learn to be present with the people in front of us so much that we're willing to be unavailable?
Right. Yeah. And, so there's some really simple things, turning your notifications off. And, this caused a lot of strife in my last relationship. And the research is showing that it's causing a lot of strife in a lot of people's relationships where, one partner is on the phone a lot, their notifications are going off, they're stepping away from important conversations to go check something, and it's not their kids. It's not, and as business owners, just a quick aside, as business owners, it's easy to justify this because it's for the business, right? And this was my ex-partner's mindset too. Like, oh, I've got a business. Like, yeah, your business cannot take over your life and brain and your relationships, right? People are so important, and in-person connection is harder to establish and find than ever. It's so critical. So that's my little soapbox, is putting in place even small digital boundaries, and also for your own mental health. We know that the first hour of the day, the last hour of the day is so important. And also what's interesting to me in the research is looking at solitude, and how solitude is actually very important for community. And it seems counterintuitive, right? Because the idea is to be around people and build community, but you need actual deep solitude and connecting with yourself and improving that relationship with yourself to be able to show up fully for others. And solitude does not mean scrolling on your phone for an hour, right? Solitude is with yourself. And so I think this kind of goes hand in hand, the digital boundaries, solitude, and then actually showing up, outside of your house in the community. And we can talk about strategies for that. These are basic ideas, but they're hard to implement.
Yes. And they're countercultural, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm even actually thinking about the legitimate addiction that I have to my phone, despite the fact that I work really hard not to be tied to it, right? Like, I am mindful of, like, my phone is constantly on do not disturb during the day because I don't want to be, a slave to notifications. I have most of my notifications off, and still I can't go to the bathroom without checking my email.
Yeah.
I don't, like, TMI, maybe, I don't know. Like, I can't go an hour without at least tapping the screen just to see, do I have a new text? Am I okay? Like, it's so deeply ingrained in my neural pathways that it takes intentionality to train myself to operate a new way, like where I have to be so mindful about, and there's some things that I want to practice that haven't, like the idea of a full day without a device sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
And like the fact that it sounds terrifying makes me feel like I need to do it.
Yeah.
Because like that addiction is so deeply ingrained in my functioning. I don't want to be tied to a device where I feel like I need it or I'm not going to be okay.
On January 1, I do a day of silence, and I'm thinking about running a challenge that isn't necessarily a whole day of silence. And it's actually 36 hours off the phone completely, and not reading, no music, no podcasts, whatever. And let me tell you, it is insane. It's so hard. And so anyway, I want to run a challenge where it is 24 hours or even just 12 hours, whatever, off your phone completely. So the phone is off. And if you have kids, your partner's watching them, whatever system you put in place, right, to not worry about that for a second. But you put your phone away. You turn it off and put it away. And then you are actually in the space of talking with people out in the community off your phone. And exactly like what you said, Jillian, the way this makes you feel inside, that possibly panicky feeling, is the indication that something needs to change, right? That you are addicted to this thing. And it's easy to underestimate how big of a pull it has on you, right?
Mhm.
And the level of addiction that it has created because it's so insidious, right?
Yeah.
And it happens in these just small tiny bits. But I think it's vital to work on this within our own lives to figure this out.
Totally. Yeah. And that discomfort becomes more and more tolerable as we practice
Yeah,
it too.
like anything.
Totally. I want you to talk about your course that you're offering. I think you said enrollment opens the 17th of April, depending on when people are listening to this. What will people learn if they want to know more about building their circle? What would make them want to take this course?
The course is called How to Build Your Circle, and it's a 6-week course where I will show up live every week and work through the different strategies for doing this. So, one thing I always think about is people would always say to me, "Oh my God, you're so lucky. Oh, you have all these friends. Like, that's so great." And I would think about how much I'm investing into people around me and how deeply I care about creating this thing. So it doesn't just
Mm,
happen. However, I know that there are some ways that people show up that might feel a little bit easier. So if people have social anxiety or if they feel especially introverted, it is maybe a little bit different of an approach than
mhm.
someone that is extroverted and fed by interacting with other people. So I would consider myself actually an ambivert, which is, where I can be quite extroverted, but I need a lot of alone time and solitude to really recharge. So,
Mhm.
anyway, the course will cover how the landscape has changed for us, from let's say 10, 20 years ago to now. So the playbook is a little bit different these
Mhm.
days than it was before. And so how can we take these steps towards building this community? The course will cover what does it even look like? What
Yeah.
does community even look like? What could it feel like for you?
Yeah.
And this is possible for people.
I
And,
love that.
and so within that, what are the strategies to take? What are the pragmatic strategies? What are the internal mindset shifts that you need to practice to do this? And then how, and then just like some really practical ways to embody this as a value.
Yes. Oh, I love this. And I'll put all the links in the show notes if people want to find you. But quickly, where can people find you on the internet if they wanted to connect?
It is Kelsey L. Green, so KELSEYL as in lemur, green.com. And then I think you can get there too just from the URL howtobuildyourcircle.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Kelsey. And again, I'm so excited for people who want to build that diverse circle of relationships in their life, both close friendships and people that think differently than them, right? Like that we can learn from. So I think this work is so important. Before we wrap up here, is there any sort of permission slip that you would want to give people who are listening?
Sure. Yeah. I think the permission slip that I would give to people around building community is that it's okay if it feels awkward or daunting or scary at first, especially if you've had a big life change, a value shift, just if you're kind of approaching relationships in a different way, it can be quite scary, right? And so I just want to give people the permission to know that that's okay. That's okay. And with that, the knowledge that other people are desiring community as well. Other people want these relationships and would love to create the same kind of thing that you're working on creating for yourself in your life. And so it's okay if it feels weird or awkward, but to take these steps anyway.
That's so great. Kelsey, thank you for this conversation. As always, it's been so enriching. I love being with you.
Thank you, Jillian. Thanks for this opportunity, and I can't wait to see what you create in the future.
Thanks for listening to this episode about building your circle. I hope that our conversation inspired you to think about the relationships that are in your life currently and the kinds of relationships that you want to cultivate. Again, Kelsey is a great resource, and check out her info on building your circle. Or if you'd like to think about the values that drive you and the ways that you want to show up in the world, my Intentional Life course is now open for enrollment, and that starts next week, April 22nd and 23rd, in person or online. I'd love to have you there too. Remember, your life matters, and so do your relationships, more than you know.